Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your favorite girl, 100 Degrees of MNK, and this is the Glam Thread Opinions. I'm going to start off by addressing the elephant in the room. I have went MIA again, and I am asking for forgiveness for the 100th billion time because y'all know life's, but the most important part is that I am back and back for a good time, okay? Hopefully for a long time. But yes, I just finished up my move from New York City to Texas, and life has been in transition mode. Now that I finally got my setup here to talk to you guys, I decided, you know what? I shouldn't put this off any longer. But before we begin, I need you all to go ahead and do me a solid of liking this video and subscribing to my channel and actually leaving something positive, negative, indifferent on this post. Now, I'm not inviting trolls to my page, but all engagement is good engagement, and whatsoever I'm not rocking with, there's a block button for that. So without further ado, let's get into today's look. I haven't been doing makeup as often as I should, so I'm not sure what we're going to be giving in today's video. I'm just gonna, do it at my own pace and hopefully something sticks. And let's get into these topics. Now, if you see me occasionally looking down or looking away, it's because so much has happened since I've been offline on YouTube, and I don't want to miss a single talking point that I've put together. Yes, people still write down what they're going to speak about before they speak about it. I'm one of those people. I'm guilty, 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 guilty. But it's only because I don't want to misrepresent anything that's being said today, considering the sensitivity and the heaviness of some of these topics. So I want to keep it very clear, and I want my stance to land in a way that it's not misrepresented. As we are talking, I do have to still do my glam part of the Glam Thread Opinions. So we're priming with Absolute New York's Mattify Me Primer. I like it. It's affordable and it does the job for my oily skin. Next, we're going to go in with my Morphe Spoolie because we are going to need some serious brows for these very serious topics that I am going to be touching on today. The very first topic that I want to discuss in today's Glam Opinions episode is Black femicide. For those of you who are unaware of what femicide is, let alone Black femicide, femicide is basically the unaliving of women. And typically it's done by a romantic partner, whether that be husband, boyfriend, relationship, what have you. It's done by a man who just hasn't been able to let go of their significant other. And this topic has lit us on fire in the past 2 months or so. And as someone who known someone who has lost their lives due to femicide and has been following Black femicide when the OGs of the women's sphere were on here talking very loudly, very passionately, and very seriously about the topic before it became something that's plastered on the news or social media every single day. And I want to give those ladies their flowers because they have kept every single one of us Black women informed for years, and they have taken all the beatings for that. I'm not going to mention their names, only because whenever you start naming names in these conversations, there's always going to be some type of deterrent trying to make something out of nothing. And if you know who the true OG of the women's sphere on YouTube are, then I don't even need to say their names. But if you come across this video, I just want you to know that this is me giving you your flowers. Okay, I did say that I was going to be occasionally looking down because I don't want to misrepresent anything that I am speaking of today, especially considering these topics are so heavy. I just want to make it very clear that Black femicide is not a trend. It is a real life thing, and it should not be taken lightly. The unaliving of Black women is staggering, and it is so disheartening because oftentimes we are ignored. We're ignored in the media. If we get some coverage, we are treated like it's just another day of business, business as usual. A lot of times it's very harmful because our stories get pushed aside and not taken seriously. From our health being ignored to our unalivings being ignored, constantly Black women are under attack, and that's a fact. That's not an opinion, that is not us complaining. That is a true fact. And if you don't want to see that, it's because you more than likely are a man and or a woman of non-color, and you are a woman of another race who just doesn't see anyone else but yourself. So there's no way you could possibly see all that a Black woman goes through. But I'd like to keep hope out there that there are people who are empathetic to the cause of a Black woman. But I just want to make it clear that there's no other group of women who have to be our own armor, our own support system more than Black women. That's just a fact. Black femicide is not a trend. It is a public health emergency. It is a public health emergency. We are not only fighting to stay alive in the medical system, but we are fighting to stay alive in our romantic relationships. Women all over, but Black women especially. Let's look at the data, okay? At least 4 Black women and girls were murdered per day in 2020. At least 4 Black women and girls were murdered per day in 2020. The findings for this data is going to be posted on the screen if you want to check the sources. A recent Essence article documents all of the current and most recent Black femicide stories that have come across our timelines, our screens, and these are their real names. And it's just scary how many of those names we don't know, but these are the names that we do know. So we have Shaniqua Pugh, shot by her husband, who then killed their 7 children. Ashley Janae, found dead in Zanzibar after a trip with her fiance. Nancy Mateer, Coral Springs vice mayor, killed by her husband. Bianca Huntley, shot in her car during rush hour in Atlanta. Ashanti Allen, 8 months pregnant, found dead in a park in Houston. Victoria Alexander, chased into her workplace and killed by her estranged husband. Raven Edwards, murdered in front of her children in DC. Gladys Johnson Ball, killed with her unborn child in Milwaukee. And the list goes on. And I just want to also name Jeanette Duncan. She and I went to Brooklyn College together. She was close friends with my former boyfriend, and she was unalived in 2019 by her ex-boyfriend, who later unalived himself but still managed to shoot her current boyfriend. And I remember when I heard that, I was in shock because I didn't quite see this coming. You know, I never would have imagined that this would have happened to somebody who was just literally 1 or 2 degrees away from me in separation. Like, I still to this day, I think about her every single time I hear a new story regarding Black femicide, and may her soul rest in peace. Let's talk about the role of misogynoir when it comes to how people perceive Black women who are unalived on a daily basis. Oftentimes we're met with questions and accusations from the manosphere regarding Black women. Oh, what did she do? She must have done something, said something, breathed the wrong way. It's always our fault as a Black woman. We are just never allowed to be a victim when we are legitimate being victimized. The fact that oftentimes this is what the manosphere and just everyday men lean into, Black men specifically, when it concerns the unaliving of Black women, it just puts us in a place of where, because we're quote unquote aggressive and unruly, therefore we are not worthy of protection. And therefore, if something like us being unalive occurs, then we in some shape or form contributed to it or deserved it in a sense. In a time where there's all this discussion about women not choosing to have children, women opting out of motherhood and marriage, and everyone is skipping to the front of the line and forgetting the fact that women are literally in survival mode in every aspect of life right now, whether it's our health, whether it's our body autonomy. And if, God forbid, we choose that we want to participate in the patriarchy by being coupled up in a relationship, because let's be honest, let's be for real, every woman that engages in a relationship with a man is participating in patriarchy, because they are taught that that is one of the rewards of being a man in the patriarchy, is having a woman. And so when we skip over all of the things that lead up to a woman being unalive, be it be the control, the verbal abuse, the physical abuse, the financial abuse, all of these things can potentially lead to a crime of passion, such as unaliving your partner, and in this case, Black femicide. So if we're not targeting the men at a very young age to respect and honor their counterparts, we are going to continuously see this happen. And unfortunately, our young Black boys have so much access to this misogyny that it is scary how quickly they are getting involved in this mindset of the manosphere. A couple of weeks ago, I saw a video of a mom who was defending her son hitting a young girl only because she rejected him. And the woman of this child was out here on camera defending her son, claiming the girl was a bully.
Did he say why he stomped on her head?
She's been a bully to him. That's it.
She's been a bully to him.
Yes, from in the classroom of the classes what they have, and some messages what I sent to his phone from her.
And that in itself is very problematic, because we as women are also contributors to our own unalivings, in the sense of how we rear our young boys and girls to thinking that if a girl does something that you do not like, it is okay to then cause harm. And this is not me leaning into that trope that, oh, what does she do to get harmed? No, I'm just saying that everyone has a role to play in how we are socializing our young Black boys. The Black manosphere continuously spreads this misogyny that leads to unalivings of Black women. And I would say they've probably taken a more softer approach over the years, because we've had the moments where like they were just like completely outright disrespectful, degrading women and Black women in just the most vile way, until those accounts started to get as possible terrorist groups online. So we've seen a more softer but still very dangerous approach in how the manosphere operates. I just want people to understand that harmful narratives online do translate into real life occurrences, real world violence, and that's not okay. I want to close out this segment by just remembering every victim that was mentioned and not mentioned in this video, because you deserve to have lived. And it's unfortunate that it's happening at the alarming rate that it's happening, but it does not do any of us a service as women, especially Black women, to be silent. Now more and more we've seen a shift to some degree of some men actually, holding their boys accountable for their terrible behavior. But it's not enough, because it's too many men to easily be able to say all men, all Black men. And the response online from most men, most Black men surrounding these unalivings of women, from the Ashley Janaes to where they wanted to bring the fact that she was in an interracial relationship, to the woman who was unalived by her husband after filing for divorce. The responses that I've seen some men say, especially some very prominent men like Roland Martin, basically memorializing the perpetrators and the ones that actually caused harm and caused the unalivings of their wives. And that was disgusting to see, and that was also very disappointing to see, because if we can't rely on our leaders to hold the men of our community accountable, then we have really missed the mark. It is not the time to speak about mental health and mental health awareness on behalf of the person that did the unaliving, whilst the actual victim is being left out of the conversation, and that is not okay. Online narratives lead to real life violence, and I just hope and pray that eventually we can move away from this as a society. So off camera, I applied my eyeshadow from Milani. This Cheyenne Bryant, please come to the front of the classroom. Today, we are going to school you, okay? Because clearly you don't think that having a degree, nor do you think having a license is necessary to be a psychology expert. Cheyenne Bryant, formerly known and agreed upon as Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, but now we're just going to call you Cheyenne Bryant, is basically a podcast influencer who has been exposed for not actually having a license or a degree, but still engaging in all things surrounding the practice of psychology. How did we let her get away with this for so long? How it started. Cheyenne Bryant went on the Joe Budden podcast, and they were discussing, she's on a press tour, by the way, for her new book, which I'm not going to give the name of the book, but she's on a press tour for her new book, and she's basically on the Joe Budden podcast, basically explaining her practice and what she does and how she goes about being a psychology expert. And essentially in the podcast, she told on herself and said, well, yeah, I'm actually not licensed. And I stopped practicing under a license years ago. I'm a psychology expert. And the reason why I don't practice under a license is because I have to diagnose people in order to bill insurance. And if I'm billing insurance, I'm basically doing a disservice to my clients.
The truth is that in order to bill insurance, I have to diagnose you. And you only get about 6 weeks. In order for me to get 6 more weeks approval, guess what? 2 things you can obviously make what you deserve, because therapy is real. So it just opened up a whole nother, floor in industry for me.
And she said a whole bunch of nothing and a lot of misinformation and misrepresentation of what psychologists actually do and what their role is. This is Mental Health Awareness Month. I have proudly been a person who has been championing mental health for about 6 years now. That's as long as I've been on my mental health journey. That's as long as I've been in therapy. So this conversation really threw me off the rails, because I'm just like, how dare you? How dare you look at the camera and say that, well, without a license, I can charge more, essentially, and I can just play around with the practice of psychology without being held accountable. It's basically what she said without saying it, with a whole bunch of semantics and fancy words. Her claim about not needing licensure to practice psychology is extremely harmful, especially because it's so difficult to already get Black people from all parts of the diaspora on board with seeking therapy. And on top of that, there is such a gap with Black psychologists actually being able to break into that door. For her to then make a mockery out of the practice and quote unquote position herself to be a stakeholder in helping the Black community when it comes to therapy is so out of line and so out of pocket. And I'm gonna sound like everybody else when I say this, but it's solely because of pretty privilege. And it sucks because you can be both a psychologist and beautiful, but in this case, this person does not require any credentials at all to be able to grift and make psychology and mental health into a hustle, which is extremely harmful. I will say TikTok, Threads, and all of social media collectively dragged her. And I gotta shout out Dr. Raquel Martin. I wasn't following her before, but I definitely am following her now, because this is when it's time to show up and show out. When there's someone causing harm within the community, I don't care if it's a Black man, Black woman, the people who are quote unquote the experts, the good Black men and women, they need to show up, and this is your time to shine.
And I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, professor of sciences, and podcast host who specializes in Black health and well-being. And I want to break down a clip from the Joe Budden podcast featuring someone who presents herself as Dr. Cheyenne Bryant. But before we dive in, I want to make something incredibly clear. Having a doctorate does not mean someone is a licensed mental health professional. You can have a doctorate in literature and be unlicensed, and you are still a doctor. When evaluating anyone's credentials, it's really critical to look at two things: what their doctorate is actually in and whether they hold a relevant clinical license. In this case, the person you're about to hear from is unlicensed. Yes, you do need a license to bill insurance, but that is not why licensure exists. Licensure protects you. It means I have completed specific education and supervised clinical hours, passed rigorous exams, and I'm accountable to a regulatory board. If I breach confidentiality, if I cross ethical boundaries or harm you, you have somewhere to file a complaint and be sure that I'm held accountable. A license is not paperwork just for billing. It's a consumer protection. When someone drops or loses or no longer has a license, they're not solely avoiding the insurance hassle. They're also removing your recourse if something goes terribly wrong.
So thank you, Dr. Raquel Martin, and thank you to all the Black psychologists for coming out to call her out on her BS. With all of this surrounding Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, it just had me thinking how badly we have become as a society, to the point where someone just got to look pretty, say a few buzzwords, and convince people to actually buy into their grift, especially surrounding something so important and so crucial to the Black community as mental health. And that will lead me into my next segment. The larger issue at hand of all of this starts at anti-intellectualism. The rise of anti-intellectualism is a reason why people would rather be more compelled and confident to give someone who just has a pretty face their time, their resources, i.e. money, rather than actually go seek true help from the experts, all in the name of, oh, well, you don't need a degree. A degree is just a piece of paper. So what? So many people have gotten degrees and they don't even use it. All in the name of that. But somebody got your money. Somebody got your coin. Somebody without a license says it's okay to still practice as a psychology expert. What we're witnessing is a cultural movement where real expertise is being overlooked and confidence is being mistaken as competence. Somehow, in the rise of microphone experts, people have convinced themselves, when I say people, I mean consumers of online media, have convinced themselves that having a podcast equates to authority. Having a podcast does not equate to having authority. This is one of the drivers of a lot of misinformation that we see across online, whether it's about psychology, health, civil rights, dating, relationships. All of these things are up for grabs in the online stratosphere for anybody to pick up a microphone and say, hey, I'm an expert, everybody has a microphone, everybody is qualified to speak on it. There's a reason why I literally have a notepad in front of me, because I went and did my research and I said, you know what? I want to make sure that when I'm speaking about these things, that I'm speaking about it as accurately as possible. So, and I also want to make sure that I'm following in a way that doesn't confuse or mislead or warp whatever I'm trying to land. Do y'all still believe that a degree is just a piece of paper? Are we still believing that lie that was told to us? Because as of right now, there are content creators going back to their 9-to-5s, going back to the things that got them a degree, because they know, just like the very wealthy and the bourgeois class knows, that a degree is not just a piece of paper. How many times have you heard celebrities in the past say, oh, well, I don't want my child to do what I do. I want them to go be a contributor to society. There is a reason why the rich and the very wealthy and very powerful still send their children to school. It's because the thing that is learned in education is not just what is taught, not just the math, the physics, the English literature, the history. It is also the character that is built and going to pursue an education and a higher education at that. It's different. It's a different level of commitment that I think people have turned their noses up at because there's not much equity and monetary reward happening in that space, especially in this day and age, especially in this economy. I just want to remind the people that say a degree is just a piece of paper that a degree signifies and cements your position as the type of person that you are. What I find interesting about this lie is that a lot of times it comes from people who've never taken the time to actually go ahead and get the degree. You know, it's always someone without the degree telling everyone else that it's just a piece of paper. A degree can represent a lot of things: discipline, rigor, accountability, commitment. And there's a lot of people who aren't willing to commit to a lot of things. Commit to parenthood, marriage, a job. We are just in that society where everything is sporadic. You like one thing one day, you like another the next day. It's an instantaneous cycle that we have caught ourselves in since the beginning and the peak of the digital age. And myself included, I am guilty of that sometimes. But nowhere will I ever say that a degree is just a piece of paper. Because I know, even when I was in elementary school, I was the most valuable player on the team. And everybody wanted me to be a part of their group when there was a team project, because not only did I have the rigor and the discipline, but I came up with some crazy banging ideas. And that's one thing that no one can ever take from you, is your degree. Unless you're like Miss Cheyenne Bryant and you never completed one at an accredited school. I just want to say this in this entire opinion piece that I'm going on a tangent off of. Like, you know, constant exposure to trauma and misinformation really does harm to our brains. It's gotten to a point where we are just desensitized to every and anything. You know, education. One thing that education does is that it teaches empathy, nuance, and critical thinking, all in the same setting. These are some of the skills that we have lost as a society, as a collective, because everything is so quick. We can easily just become fatigued from anything that may have, you know, kept us drawn in and empathetic and caring about the next person. Look at COVID. Look at the last panoramic, as we have to say on here, because YouTube and them are always demonetizing and taking things down. You guys remember when everybody was like all in this together and we cared and we had empathy and we put everything to the side to tackle this global crisis? And then immediately after that, it was like everything went up. Rent went up, groceries went up, childcare went up. Like, it just became this rat race to survive in an economy and in a time, to be honest, I feel like the economy did not need the inflation of these prices that we're seeing now. It did not need that. It absolutely did not call for that. The greed is just a means to an end at this point. Everything is just so expensive. So right now we are in a time of empathy fatigue and emotional numbness. Nothing moves us the same way. In the beginning of this video, I discussed all the Black women that were unalived within the past 2 or 3 months. And even now, it's crickets, like it never happened. just something we move past from. I know Black women as a collective haven't moved on, but everyone else seems to have moved on. It says Pat McGrath on the lips, by the way. Ooh, yeah, juicy. On the topic of degrees, I go by the name of 100 degrees of MNK, but that has nothing to do with my degrees or how many degrees I have. I have 2 degrees, an undergrad and a graduate degree. I did my undergrad in communications with a minor in television and radio, and I did my master's in marketing with a concentration of social media and mobile marketing, because I wanted to know how to better market myself, and also I wanted to be aware of how things are being marketed for me and will be marketed to me in the future. Now, on the topic of, most people that go and get a degree, they never use their degree. Most of them don't use a degree. Another lie. Yes, my current role isn't a marketing position. My current role at work isn't in communications. That is tied to a whole nother discussion about equity, inclusion, and just what the journey looks like for Black professionals trying to land their first entry-level role in a saturated and heavily competitive market. You know, there will always be a market for doctors, nurses, lawyers, engineers, etc., because those people move society forward as far as keeping our health and safety intact. The other half of moving society forward shows up in the arts, in humanities, in all things that we love to see in entertainment, politics, and so forth. It's very difficult, and the window to step in is this big. So that aside, am I just going to sit down and let my degree go to waste? Absolutely not. This setup, the lighting, the audio, the editing that's going to come afterwards, the copy, the caption, the targeting, all of those things I learned in school, and I'm learning how to perfect it even more as I interact with these interfaces day to day. Some people would have just quit and decided, you know what, I'm just going to keep myself to an everyday job and never push for my dream and not embrace the pivot. Like, I use it every day in how I adjust my lighting, how I write my scripts for my voiceovers, for my podcasts, for what I'm going to talk about. And my 9 to 5, all the things that I learned in college and graduate school show up in how I'm able to engage in conflict resolution, de-escalation, being diplomatic, all those things that you have to learn as you go throughout life. But in college, you really learn how to use your soft skills. You really learn how to, get a sense of what it means to have interpersonal connections and building true relationships, true networking, not just following people and going to the same event as them, but actually building relationships, going to lunch with somebody who you would like to collaborate with, really honing into hospitality. All those are the different ways that I currently use all the degrees that I've got. And it's still not going to stop me from going to get another one that I don't have the finances or the status in my circle, in my world, in my place of work yet. Because that process that it took me to get that degree is the same process that it's going to take for me to become successful outside of that space. So I would be remiss if I downplayed my accomplishments or the accomplishments of anybody who is brave enough to go out and get a degree. It's not only very expensive, it's taxing. It will have you questioning if you are really smart and intelligent. It will have you questioning if it was even worth it. But once you get on that stage and you move that tassel to your left, or when you put that robe on for my doctors, because I've seen it and I was just like, oh my gosh, I need that. I need that. That was my process on graduation day, getting my master's. Even before they told us to turn our tassel, when they were presenting the doctoral degrees, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need that. That's going to be me in the next couple of years. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know how I'm going to be able to afford it, but I need that. So it is just beyond a piece of paper. It is grit. It is audacity. One of the biggest takeaways that I want people who are watching this video to understand is that having a degree and completing it to the highest level as a doctor, it carries weight and it should not be taken lightly. I want people to also understand that a degree does not define you. Your value exists regardless. However, comma, with your worth being inherent, the icing on the cake that graduating from an accredited institution at the highest level, it will never, ever, 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 ever be one where you could just minimize according to the status quo. It just doesn't work. The doctorate degree is the status quo, and going to get the education is the status quo. It's part of upholding that status quo. Let's not get sidetracked here. The wealthy are still making sure their children get that education. And I think class comes into play when education is spoken of, because the quality of education that you have or that you've had can shape your perception on the value of it. If you went to a private school, if you went to a charter school, if you went to any school where parents who have access were able to ensure that their children had the best and most qualifying education from the best of the best, under the right circumstances, under the right zip code, then the quality and the value of education is inherent, is inherently good. So therefore, it's something that you should continuously aspire to attain at the highest level. Versus if you were in a zip code that was coded with crime and food deserts, and your parents, when they get home, they're too tired to assist you with your homework, or you don't have the access to tutoring because your parents can't afford to choose between food on the table and you getting extra lessons outside of your own abilities and your own discipline as a child and or adult. Like, this is apples and oranges here. So miss me with that. The wealthy aren't telling their children to go to school. They are absolutely telling their children to go to school. I don't know about you, but my standard for my future children, if I decide to, and after I decide to, if I'm blessed to have children in the future, there will be no child left behind. You're going to be well-read, well-cultured, well-exposed. And most importantly, you're going to get that degree. A vocation, certification, after deciding that the degree isn't your style of education, but we're going to try and we're going to execute to the highest level of education, no matter which path is chosen. That's just the standard. That's the standard that I have for myself, and that'll be the standard for my future children if I choose to have them. I want people to understand that education is not just about money. It's about access, it's about upward mobility, and it's about power. And that's why there is this push right now to keep people uneducated and to keep people having less and less and less access to the best education and to the benefits that come with that come from that. So what happens when you have the access to mobility and the power? You can decide what is cool, what is trendy, what is worthy, who gets paid, and who doesn't get paid. This is actually kind of like a bonus in this podcast today. Painted by Esther versus Patrick Ta. I honestly was going to leave this off of this podcast, but it's current, it's trending, and it's important as a Black creative that I cover it, because this happens to small creators all day, every day. So Painted by Esther is known for popularizing the transition blush look, the one that we've seen on the likes of Olandria, Chloe Bailey, even Kelly Rowland has been in the chair that belongs to Painted by Esther. Now, literally a day, 2 days ago, Patrick Ta came on the internet to debut his new transition blush palette. And immediately it raised alarms and sounds within the makeup community. Now, I do dibble and dabble in the link in bio, consumer, LTK, all of that jazz. I am guilty. You can handcuff me right now. I am engulfed in that community, even though I am a very small part and I'm not at the highest level yet. So this came on my For You page, this was on my Instagram page, this was on my Facebook page, and this was on my YouTube Shorts page, and I had to talk about it. Patrick Ta, I have his products. I have his foundation and I have one of his blushes. When I found out that there was a creator online that wasn't getting paid for promoting his stuff, I kind of like stopped buying his products. I still have his products, but I haven't gone out of my way to buy his products. In fact, I've gone out of my way more and more times to try to find Black owned products, because I know at the least the money is going in a Black woman's pocket. Is creativity dead? Is creativity dead, or is it that the gatekeepers of cool and those who have access of cool and creativity are just notoriously stealing and committing theft from smaller creators? Patrick Ta has been accused of the following: allegedly not paying creators, not crediting creators, and from Painted by Esther's own mouth, for allegedly trying to spy on her technique by booking a do and go, where you're just supposed to come in and do the technique and go. In fact, the agent told her that, the other half of the Patrick Ta artistry would just like to record you doing your work. And Esther's like, absolutely not. We will not be doing that. My creativity is not up for grabs. So now, why does this such a thing? It's because we've seen so many times where Black women have curated, created, and mastered a technique, something that is cool, whether that is our hair, our fashion, our dancing, our intellectual property. And somehow we end up being the struggling broke artist who doesn't get their credit or accolades, or even while getting those credit and accolades, don't get the benefits and rewards of being paid and being compensated well for being the trailblazer and creator of that thing. And this is what we're seeing with the Painted by Esther and Patrick Ta scenario. I've noticed from this entire segment, people want the rewards of the hard work and expertise without actually having to do the hard work. And just because this has been around forever, the transition blush technique has been around forever, people didn't start paying attention until Painted by Esther brought it to the forefront. And with her being young, with her having to sacrifice so much of her time, money, resources to not get the proper credit, to not be invited to show the tutorial, show the technique, this would have been an amazing collaboration opportunity. Remix. When life gives you lemons, Estee Lauder gives you a MAC x Olandria x Painted by Esther collab. No theft, just a veteran beauty house giving a vet in the making her flowers and her coin in real time. So shout out to MAC, shout out to Estee Lauder. The timing of this couldn't have been more perfect. And the juxtaposition of these two women, chef's kiss. Olandria, the reality TV star turned it girl they tried to cast as a black sheep, and Esther, the makeup artist they tried to edge out of her own technique, finally getting their justice. Okay, I'm done. Back to the video. You've seen this playbook over and over. A black woman creates it, curates, masters it, packages it, and puts it out there. A few people take notice of it, and the bigwigs come over and completely hijack and monetize it altogether. And the black woman is still left paying the price of wanting to be seen and heard and sharing her gifts to the world. I say all this to say that so much is happening in the world. And as a black woman, we are facing the probability of being unalived by our partners at high rates, losing our jobs at the highest rates, losing out on monetization and creativity and all of those opportunities we're losing out on, or we're being silenced in fear of being blackballed from spaces that we have yet to enter or have entered, and we don't want to lose that. And everyone just expects for it to be happy-go-lucky over here. I hope that in today's podcast, you learned something, you learned many things, and that you start to question, why is it that we as a society are so comfortable with letting the black woman down? And as a black woman, I understand we give so much, we contribute so much, and yet we are still left behind to pick up the pieces. We are still being knocked down. We are still being belittled. And this is not to take away from the fact that we have also persevered. We have also continuously trailblazed. We have also lifted and kept our head high in the midst of adversity. And I don't take that for granted as a black woman. And I see you. I see all of you black women. I see all of you creatives. I see all of you black educators, black doctors. I see you. I just really wanted to put this in a podcast because I have been gone for so long and all of this has been happening, and I had it stuck in my brain, and I'm like, this cannot be something that I just brush over. Thank you to everyone who made it to the end of this video. I really appreciate it. Please continue to subscribe. I'm going to try my best to remain consistent. I'm still in the process of settling into my Austin apartment, but I don't want to use that as an excuse anymore to stay hidden. So thank you so much for tuning in to the Glam Thread Opinions. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Let me know what you think about all that I've discussed in this video. And I will see you on the next episode of the Glam Thread Opinions. Bye!